That music is just fitting.
We can see. Now this, I'll tell you a quick story. This allegedly came from the old Petrie Hospital. Those from Murphy that know, some may have been born there, later on called the Providence. This was a water jug for the patient's rooms. This portion of this ashtray was from the Cherokee Hotel, which was where Main Street USA is. The Cherokee Hotel was there and it burned, I believe, in the 80s. But this sat in the lobby, and after the fire, it was all taken to the scrapyard, and a fellow was walking through and seeing this portion, which was not painted at the time. It was just a husk, just a portion of the original, and he got that and added the base and the top, but this is original from the lobby of the Cherokee Hotel.
Wow.
Here we can see room number 6.
Old original numbers.
Everything's original, the knobs, the keyholes, skeleton key.
Fascinating.
Got the original clawfoot tub. Probably the original sink, if not very close to original.
That pretty much looks original.
How many rubber duckies were in that tub at one point?
Good question on that one.
How many cigarettes were smoked while laying in that tub?
Now that I would say a bunch. Bunch of Lucky Strikes. Chesterfields. Old Gold. Camel Classic. Camel. Made from Turkish tobacco. Part of the original old windows.
Got the old medicine cabinet. Can't forget your triple antibiotic ointment.
Oh no. Wild.
Now here we've got room 2, and my family had told me, even when they were living here in the late 60s, early 70s, there were still customers renting these rooms with them. And the fellow that lived in this room was said to be a slender, small-framed fellow that had a very strange demeanor, and all the children were sort of afraid of him. He was sort of spooky, not sure of his name, but this was his room. This room we can go in, it kind of will show you how things looked.
Number 3. Love the old bed frame.
Old iron bed and dresser with a wash basin. Original windows, original light fixture still.
Nice. And a spacious closet.
We have some very fine clothing.
Wow. Oh, I understand this Foot Locker has a little history to it.
That Foot Locker belonged to Jerry Winslow Davidson, born and died in Murphy. Served World War II in the Army Air Corps, I guess you'd call it. Later on, the Air Force, and at the time of that trunk, he was a brigadier general, as it says on the front. He was a Murphy native, buried at Sunset Cemetery, if I remember right. Find a lot about him in the old Scout archives. That's Murphy looking from the old Methodist church, or the second church, built in 22, down Valley River Avenue. That was after the installation of new street lights to show the improved quality of the lighting. Of course, there was a picture taken before, and it was very dark. This is the after.
I wonder if Crisp took this.
It's possible. As you can see, the tripod was sitting right there.
Huh. So I guess he would have left it sitting on the steps.
Yeah.
As that was not handheld.
This would have been mid-50s. Let's see what else we got back here.
Okay, because that would have been about a 10-second give or take exposure.
This is looking from the center of town towards the church where the previous picture was taken. As you can see here, Monty Drug, Parker's Drug Store. There's the Ford dealership, Evans Ford. And you can see the roundabout, which we're going to be getting another one soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
And if you can see here, it's hard to tell. This was the old location of the Hen Theater. It was down on the corner as you go into the curve in front of the church. Hen, right there, before it moved to its current location in the early 40s. That was PJ Hen. Here's a similar photo, same general area, zoomed in a little further. Parker's Drug Store, shortly after it was completed. That was built around 1918. The old Ford garage, before it was expanded to take this whole space. Then the first brick store, Murphy's here, which is currently giving a free advertisement, Mason's Bar. Previously the Daily Grind.
Yeah.
Here we have John Fain's store, currently Black and White Market. And you can see the very corner of what used to be called Duke Park. You can see the metal fence. Previous to the roundabout was Duke Park, before cars made a big introduction.
Wow. All right, let's take a look at this historic second floor porch. About the only one on this street. Well, it is the only one on this
It
street.
should be the only one.
And not many that I know of in town. Which this bedroom had a view of the porch.
Now I assume this was probably for an AC unit way later on. That was probably a support. Because the house has no AC, no heat. Now, if we look out here on this street, we can see some old buildings. The large commercial property there with the boat. At one time, I believe it was a cigarette wholesale warehouse. Another time, a quin hatchery. Another time, a hosiery mill. And now it's just rented. And then we have the house to the left with the light yellow. That house is probably the oldest house on the street. I would have to say turn of the century. Not clear on the early history of that house yet. The house on the corner there was Ed Dickey's old house. Many people from Murphy would have known him and his wife. They lived there.
We gather the title of the next number. That person who is
Fascinating.
And then you can see the back of the buildings on Tennessee Street, including the two-story buildings there, one of those being one of Murphy's old post offices.
Really?
Yep. Those were both built, as far as I can tell by my research, by Nettie Dickey of the Dickey Hotel. She had both of those built. She was very well-to-do and did a lot for Murphy. And then just down from those buildings up toward the center of town, a little ways was her hotel, the Dickey House. which was written about in Scribner's magazine in 1933, I believe, which was a national magazine.
And then, of course, our famous courthouse.
Yep. Depending on who you ask, that could be the third courthouse, it could be the fifth or sixth, depending on how you look at it. The first courts were held at Fort Butler at the barracks. And then I've heard a story that the fort was dismantled after the removal, hauled across the river, set up on the middle of town, and there was a makeshift courthouse there until Archibald Hunter had the first brick courthouse built, which would have been between 41 and 43. That courthouse, of course, was burned down in 1865, shortly after the Civil War ended. They rebuilt a courthouse similar to its shape in 1868, and that's the first courthouse picture that we have seen in the history books that would have looked similar to the courthouse from before the war. That courthouse outgrew, well, the county outgrew the courthouse within a short time, a few decades, and they moved the courthouse down the street to where the current courthouse is, completing that courthouse in about 1890. That courthouse had its first fire in about 1893-94. It survived the fire, and they rebuilt the interior, and unfortunately had a second fire in 1924, which destroyed it. The fire had done so much damage to the brick walls and everything the first time that the second time did it in, and it couldn't be saved.
Now, something I was always curious about, Fort Butler, they have the monuments up on top of the hill. It almost seemed illogical that it would be up that high when it should be down by the river.
Well, I think looking at the old military tactics, at the time this was a dangerous place. It was still just an uncharted territory, really, with a few settlers that came in, including Hunter. But a fort would have been up high to where you could look down and defend yourself better against attackers.
Okay.
Which at that time, there could have been hostile Cherokee, I'm sure there were, or just anybody really. So they wanted to have a high vantage point in order to defend the fort from.
All right.
Yeah.
It just seemed totally illogical as far as hauling water.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it was a chore, but they had enough mules and horses and things to help do that. And of course, people back then were better suited for that type of work than now.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then Mr. Hunter had the ferry that was just right where the river is now, and he would ferry the troops and citizens back and forth across the river. That also helped in growing his fortune, as he was a very well-off early citizen and really the founder of Murphy, being the first one to settle here down near the confluence of the rivers.
And he has his name chiseled on the side of the famous Murphy Pyramid.
The Murphy Pyramid, that was completed in 1930, which was actually after the death of Lily Coit.
Lily Hitchcock Coit.
She left it in her will for that pyramid to be built, and I believe it's marble, or granite. It was brought up here from the Marietta Marble Company, I believe, on a railroad, and constructed.
And purportedly the largest pyramid east of the Mississippi.
I did definitely at that time, and if not the only one. Now I have seen a few pyramid monuments in other old cemeteries. Some I think even before that one, but at that time, the best of citizens of the county knew that was the only one.
Now, for those of you who like San Francisco, another little bit of trivia. Lily Hitchcock Coit also fronted the money for that big fire hose monument, that phallic symbol in downtown San Francisco. That was a tribute to firefighters.
Yes.
As a young adventurous lady, she liked hanging out with the firefighters. Mm-hmm. And that was part of her legacy, to leave money for that monument. And evidently she loved the pyramids and these type monuments from her travels to Egypt.
Yes, that's right. She traveled to Egypt and France. She wrote the cookbook, which I have a copy of.
Really?
And if you look at her signature, she signed her signature Lily Hitchcock Coit with a number 5. The number 5 denotes the Knickerbocker number 5 engine company of San Francisco. That's right. She had such an infatuation with them, she would escape from her parents' house in San Francisco. When the fire calls would go out, she would escape out of the window and go to them. And they eventually, basically, adopted her into their engine there. And
That is too cool.
she wore pants and carried guns and lots of things the women at the time weren't seen doing.
Wow.
But her father, Charles, and her mother met here in Murphy at the fort. And her mother's father was Archibald Hunter.
Wow. So it just goes to show you never know what twists and ties bind us all together in this world. All right. Well, this has been good. I think right about now is about time to wrap this up. We're already into 35, 36 minutes.
Time flies, doesn't it?
And we just scratched the surface. We'll revisit this again on another day. But this has been good, and once again, a piece of history from Murphy, North Carolina that needs to be preserved, that as people pass on, it's lost. Many of this people didn't know, it's gone. So we've got to get out there and tell the story before we're gone.
Yes, it's got to be recorded, and people need to appreciate it and come enjoy it. And this is probably one of the few boarding houses left in Murphy at all, if not untouched as it is, hidden among the streets.
Okay, this has been Bruce with Cameron Killian in Murphy, North Carolina. And as always, in 2024, trying to leave these videos upbeat. In 2024, folks, be awesome. See you on the next video.
Adios.